Hey guys, how's it going? So in today's video, we're going to be implementing a title bar. And the way I explain it is going to be in a way that you can adapt it for your framework. The framework I'm using is React. And oh yeah, this is for Tauri, by the way. And it's also using Mantine as the UI library. So, I have perfected the style to my liking, but the styles for these buttons over here I've provided, and everything is at your disposal, right? So I believe that if you use anything else, it's just going to be a bit harder than or imperfect than compared to what I've presented here. So let me just demo this title bar really quickly. So this is in fact a custom title bar, and you can drag it around like this using a custom attribute. You can also set other things to drag, and so I can drag the header. Let's take a look at the light theme. And since this is my app, it's a bit laggy. I haven't optimized it completely. So now my eyes are hurting, but you can see that the title bar works in both dark and light. And I have options here so that you can have the icon change based on whether it's light or dark. Then I have these buttons, and they also have they have labels basically when you hover them. And not just that, when you click it, the icons get brighter. So, or in this case, it gets darker. So it's really nice like that. And yeah, I've been very meticulous. Even the shade of the title bar, that was chosen meticulously as well. Okay, so let us get started. Now, the first thing you want to do is you want to open up your code. So I'm going to close my app really quickly. And oh yeah, one more thing is the scroll bar. You can see that the scroll bar is on the inside of the app, even though the title bar is in HTML. This is not a coincidence. I have done this on purpose. It did not come out like that. It was not taken care of natively or through Tauri. I had to do that myself to get that awesome experience. So let me close my app and open up the template, and we can get started. I didn't make this video yesterday, but the feedback was I went too fast. So I am making this video again so that I can take care of all of your nuances, especially even the vanilla options, right? So the first thing we want to do is enable the Tauri APIs that relate to window. So that would be close, or anything that's true. So close, maximize, minimize, set decorations, which I'll get to soon. Set focus, not really required. Set size, not really required. Start dragging is true. Unmaximize is true. Unminimized does not have to be true, but I have it as true. And I'll explain what decorations are. Decorations is basically the title bar. So when decorations are on, that means the native title bar is allowed. And when decorations are off, that means you have to take care of it yourself, or you won't have a native title bar. Is basically what it's saying, especially on Windows. And yeah, this title bar is only for Windows, by the way. So if you're on Mac or Linux, you probably won't be able to you'll have to remove the guard that I'll provide and then add it. So this code should be run only on Windows, for Windows users, not your Mac or Linux users. After that, optionally, if you're running a vanilla app without the Tauri Windows State plugin, so if you're not using the Tauri Windows State plugin, you can get away with setting decorations to false. And if you're not using what's that called, or if you are using the Windows State plugin like I am, then you can either have it set to true, or you can have different configurations. So you can have a Windows configuration and then set it to false only for that one, which is the optimal way to do it. But let's take a look right now at how to do it. So I'll just show you as an example on how to do it, right? So if I search up Windows configuration, configuration files. So Windows, okay. That is definitely not it. Conf. Tauri.configuration. Okay, so let's see here. It's somewhere here, most likely. As soon as I figure it out. Okay, so we got configuration, and you can do platform specific configurations, okay? So in addition to the default configuration, Tauri can read platform specific configuration for tauri.linux.conf.json, tauriwindows.conf.json, and tauri.macOS.conf.json, so, or the tomls, and which gets merged. So what you want to do is create a file called configuration, and then you basically want to do something like this, except don't want this stuff. Okay, and then you want to do this. And you want to set decorations to false. Now, I am not sure, since it gets merged, I believe that the window gets overridden, but we will see how things will work. So I did save it, but am I... Oh, hold on. Let's see if there's a bug or what'll occur. Okay, so what you will see is the app that gets launched won't have the native title bar until it gets launched now. So this is kind of what you want to do, just duplicate it into Windows and set the decorations to false. Okay, so you can do that as well. Now moving onwards, let's go to your package.json. So to get that custom scroll bar that I showed earlier, okay, it's not here, but that I showed earlier, you have to install SimpleBar, or in React, SimpleBar React. We can just do yarn add SimpleBar React. All right, and we'll customize that in app.jsx when we get to it. Before we create a title bar in React, I'll just go over vanilla JavaScript. So over here is a kind of a not thorough, but a basic guide to creating a title bar in vanilla of JavaScript. So you just follow these instructions, and all you have to do is edit the styling and add some more code that I will show you from my title bar. But the important part is how to use JavaScript. So you can see that some of the things is the import. So how do you import something in vanilla JavaScript? So you have to have script type module, and then you can use import and you can do all that. The other thing is that maybe you want to use await in your code. So this is some other code. It's not related to title bar, so don't worry about it. You want to make sure you have a guard over here so that your code and your HTML only show up on Tauri. So that is also required. And you probably want to set decorations here as well. So there's a lot of stuff if you're doing vanilla that I can't take care of for you. So if you are using a Vite though, and you're targeting a lower JavaScript, like I am, like 2021, then you also want to make sure you have this top level await, because Safari 13 doesn't allow top level await. So you want to make sure you have that. Of course, you can just up Safari 13 to Safari 14. That also works out. So it's not really a big deal. Okay, moving onwards to title bar. Oh yeah, and that plugin is from Vite plugin top level await. So moving onwards to the title bar, this is what we've been waiting for. Okay, so how do we do this? Well, what do we need? Well, we need to import our UI library, stuff from our UI library. So things I imported from the UI library is this unstyled button, so I can get this menu. I'm not sure if I demoed this, but you can have an Easter egg here. You want to have text, so the label over here, that's text. You want to have the menu, so this is actually just optional, so it's not really important. And lastly, you want to have a way to get whether it's dark or light. That's important as well, so that your title bar is styled for light and dark without having to duplicate a lot of code. So that's what create styles is for. Next, you want to have this hook, this use interval hook. So this use interval hook is very useful for changing the icon of the app. So when I maximize this window from double clicking, the front end code over here doesn't take care of that. It doesn't know that I double click the window to maximize it. So if the user somehow did this, so what if the user did this, right? They moved their window up here and they moved it back down. The user expects the icon to change, but how do we take care of that? I decided to just use a front-end approach and use polling. So I poll whether the app is maximized or not and change the icon based on that. I also use a API that'll come out soon to get the title. So if the title changes in somewhere else in your code, you can take care of that itself. The title bar will automatically take care of that. So you don't have to worry about the interpolation. The title bar over here is isolated. It doesn't depend on anything, any props or anything. So you can copy paste it into your code and just adapt it. So next we have the app window. So import app window from the Tauri API. And the app window is useful because this is the current app that's open or app window that's open. So we don't want to have API calls just to get the app window that's open, right? So we're just going to use app window. Next, we use useEffect and use state. So as I said before, we want to keep track of whether the app is maximized or not. So we need to have a state for if it's maximized, because suppose we have the interval running and we detect it's maximized, then we want to trigger a render of the title bar. So that's why we have a state for that. But we also want to trigger a render if the title changes. So that's why we use state for both of those. And then we set up the interval. And then we use the useEffect to start and stop the interval. Okay? And the what useEffect returns is the code to run when the component is dismounted or unmounted, my bad. Next, we have the use translation. So right now I don't have the translation supporting all these things. So maximize, close, and minimize for the labels, but I'm a meticulous person, which is why I added it like that. Next, we import these icons. So you'll need 4 icons: the minimize icon, the close icon, the maximize icon, and the restore down icon. Just make sure you have all 4 of those. In the code that Tauri provides, they don't take care of that, which is why you should be listening to this even if you're on vanilla JavaScript or HTML. And I forgot about one icon, which is unrelated to these window controls, which is the app icon. So on Windows, it is tradition to have the icon in the top left corner. So this isn't a native feature either. You have to code this in yourself. So just import the 32 by 32 PNG or the smallest icon that is bigger than or at least 16 by 16. So you can import an image in React or JavaScript like this. It's really cool. And how you use it is you just set the source of an image to that icon. Okay, so let's get starting to code. First, we get the T, so for translations of strings. Then we set the classes. So then we get the styles or the dynamic styles, which we'll come to later after we go over the structure. So then we get the state for maximized or window title with defaults or same defaults, I guess. And next we set up an interval. So the interval we're using is, what's this? Oh yeah. The interval we're using is just to get the is maximizer title, and this hook is from Mantine hooks. So you don't actually need to install the UI library Mantine to get this hook. You can install Mantine/hooks and you can get that hook. I really recommend using this hook over implementing it yourself because online is some outdated or poorly documented code that doesn't let you stop properly. So, just saying. Oh, okay. So anyways, going onwards, let's code this app. So the first thing you want to do is take care of the entire title bar. So we've created a div and we want to add a attribute called data Tauri drag region. This tells Tauri it tells Tauri that portion of the HTML should drag the entire window instead of being one of these drags. So it should drag the entire window. Then we want to style it in a way so that you can group icons on left, right, or center. So to do that, we have a style called, let me move this up so that you guys can see. So we have title bar style. So I guess I will do it on par. So we just want to copy paste this, and you can copy paste this, and it's basically saying that some icons grouped here, some icons can group, some stuff can group here in the middle, or things can group in the right because it's space between. Then we want to change the background based on the color scheme. We want to set the height to 30 pixels. We want to have it so that the user can't select text as well. And we want to have it so that the position is fixed, so it's always on top. Then we set all this top, left, right, 0, Z index to 1000. That's what I found works. And then we also want to set the flex of these three to a flex or a flex end. And that's to avoid multiple classes. So if you use another class, you could do the same, but I just avoided multiple classes. So yeah, it depends on how you want to do it. Okay, moving on is this menu. So, or this app icon basically. Now I won't discuss the menu. You can copy paste that if you're, using Mantine. So I will only discuss the image itself. So to use the image, we use an unstyled button, or actually we don't need an unstyled button. We just need an image. So have an image with the class name of title bar icon, which we'll get to. And we're going to set the height to 16, so set the height to 16, not the width, and set the app icon at the source as app icon. Now, what is the title bar icon styling? Well, it is margin left of 5. That's what I found out is a sweet spot. You want to have a vertical align of bottom. So what I found is that if you use a vertical align of middle, it goes to down. So I know it sounds weird, but vertical align bottom is actually a bit higher, or it looks better than vertical align middle. Next, we want to have a filter. So suppose you want to have the image a bit darker, or have a filter based on the color scheme, you can do that here. If you want to change the app icon completely, you can also use a ternary over here and just call use Mantine theme, but it's not really going for everything here. I'm not going to do everything for you, right? I'm not going to be here always. So next, let's talk about the title bar label. We can either have it on the left here or in the middle. So if we want it on the left, we can have it in the same div as the app icon, and we can just say we want to have it draggable because it's text. Then we want to make it inline. And that's because otherwise it'll wrap. Then we want to set the class name as title bar label and the size as small. I found out that the size of small works the best, or looks the most natural. And then we just want to have the window title here, which is a state variable that gets updated, or it will get updated in the future based on if someone calls an API to change the title. So you don't have to worry about it. Like I said earlier, title bar component is completely independent, doesn't require props or anything. Next, we have the div, or next we can have a center title. So to use a center title, all we have to do is comment out the left one and put our own in here. And you'll see that the margin is too far to the left. So what you can do is actually uncomment the next part of the code, which is over here. So you can see that I have a display of inline margin left of 5, but you can also make that margin left something bigger. So if you're using the center title, you can increase the margin basically. And I believe I should make this minus 32 or something like this. So there you have it. You can have a custom margin there to take care of the title when it's in the middle. And I don't really prefer it on the middle because it looks more like Mac than Windows. So I prefer it on the left. And let's move on to the next thing, which is these 3 icons, which is probably the more important things. But at the same time, it's already documented by Tauri. So in Tauri, they use event listeners, but in React, if you forget how to convert the code, this is the old way to do it back before React. In React, all you do is on-click, right? So we have the div, and this is for the entire button. You'll notice that the icon is not the button. The button is big, and the icon is just a small portion of it. So we want to have a div for the button, and then the icon inside of that. So that's what we have here. We have a div, and the title for that button is minimize or something. Now, you could arguably use an unstyled button. However, you need to have that, you need to change the icon or the pointer, and that's kind of a headache. So a div is fine. And set the class name for all these buttons to title bar button, and on click as minimize, maximize, toggle maximize or close. Next, we want to have this VS Chrome minimize. So make sure you're using the correct icon for each of these buttons. And here is the important part, which is the maximize ternary. We want to conditionally render the middle icon based on whether we're maximized or not. So we can just use a question mark or a ternary operator and say, okay, if it's maximized, we want to show a restore down icon. And if it isn't maximized, we want to show the maximize icon. All right. And then we just close that and we're good. You can port that code over to your index.html. But now we'll take a look at two things, the title bar button, as well as the title bar close and the vertical align. So the vertical align can be found here, which is just a vertical align middle so that you don't have to, code this every single time. But the title bar button is important. So a couple things I added on top of Tauri is, instead of Tauri, is the transition duration. So you want to make it look nice even if the user is hovering over it, okay? So that's what I've added here. You want to have an inline flex as a display. That's all provided by Tauri. Now this is something I added, which is the SVG filter. So if you have a dark title bar, the icon should be white. If the title bar is white, the icon should be black, except for if you're hovering over the close button, then you want the icon to be white. So that's also taken care of in this code. So you want to have a width, you want to set the width, and then you can set the hover, and the active. So you can see that when you hover it, it changes colors, but it's not just that. In the Tauri provides a simple thing, but I go one step further, which is when you hover it and it's activated, you get a completely new color for the background. So it works exactly like it's a native title bar, even though it's not. So I have a color scheme for that as well. So if you're on the light theme, then the background gets darker, but if you're on the dark theme, the background gets lighter. And yeah, okay. Except for the close button where it's the opposite. Now, lots of UI and UX going on here, which I'm not going to explain. And then let's style the title bar close. So we're basically doing the same thing as the title bar button, but we just want to change the colors. So like before, we have the hover. So when it's hovering, we want to change the color of the, wait a second. We want to change the color of the button to red. Okay. And we want to change the color of the actual icon to white in the case of a light theme. But since it is CSS and the browser smart or fast, you can have the same CSS there. You don't have to do a filter or anything. That's going to be overkill and you're going to get 0 performance gains. And lastly, again, when it's active, we want to set a color to that button. And I have it set to 2 different colors. And you may ask, you probably won't be curious on how I got those colors or selected those colors. But what I did is I actually used a color picker on actual applications to get the color code. So I used the color picker on native applications and saw what the color was. And that's how I did it. So that's how I know, that's how you can know that I'm very meticulous when it came to this. Okay, so now that we have a title bar component that's independent, how do we use it? Because how do we port our code from using a native title bar to use the custom title bar? Well, the first thing you want to do, or first couple things, is you want to import the simple bar and you want to import the title bar. And you also want to import the app window. So these things are necessary. Let's go over it. Okay, I screwed that up. Okay, so as you can see, these 4 imports are absolutely necessary. And now let's get to why. So in our utils.js, create a variable called, I know it's messy, but create a variable called const win32 custom title bar. So this signifies that the title bar we've created is for Windows only. Now, I'm not sure if I'll do a Mac custom title bar in the future, but I don't use a Mac, so I don't really care too much about a custom Mac experience. That's overkill in my opinion. I don't believe anyone should use Macs, or any programmer should use Macs. It's either Linux or Windows, so you pick. But I believe Macs have a place for someone else that is not me. So yeah. And so we want to make sure that the code, this title bar, is only used for Windows. So we don't want to ruin the Mac user's experience, okay? That's or the Linux user's experience. So we do that, and we import that in our app as well. So somewhere over here, I've imported that from utils. And let's get started. So the first thing you want to do is figure out what the operating system is. To do that, you can use my custom context provider that does a lot of the work for you. So over here, I'm not going to explain it because it is from another video, but you can use this to cache variables that won't change on runtime, and you can speed up your usage of those variables. But if you want to do it another way, that's fine. What's important is how you use that variable. So you want to have a use effect that is tracking the OS type from undefined to whatever it's set. And you want to say that if the OS type is Windows, then we want to set decorations to the opposite of Win32 custom title bar. So if we are using a custom title bar, or we want to use a custom title bar, then we want to set decorations to false because, we want to set the native to off. And the other thing is that the fact that OS type is actually a string means that we're already running in Tauri, so we don't have to worry about this code failing. And down here, we can also see that we have a using custom title bar is nothing but OS equals Windows and Windows custom title bar. So this means that we want to tell React to only use, or in our render code, we want to use the custom title bar only if we have the title bar enabled. So maybe you don't like a custom title bar, right? Or you're figuring out your code for your scrolling. And then you have an OS type of Windows. So that means it is ready for production like that. So how do we use this code? How do we implement this, or, actually render this title bar now? Well, let's go down here. So the first thing you want to do is figure out some styling, because all of this comes down to styling. So when I used the scroll bar, there were some styling issues with it. So some examples would be the margin top of the scroll bar was too high. It would go into the top over here, or the margin of the bottom of the scroll bar was overlapped with the footer. So that's also an issue that you need to take care of. You want to disable the scroll bar of the body. So if you don't want to have custom scroll bars, then you would need to do something. Exactly. So if you're using a custom title bar, you have to disable the body scroll. So that's why I have it overflow Y hidden and body. And this is a global style. So we use the global import from Mantine core. And there you go. And we just set the style to that. All right. So moving onwards, we see that if you're using the custom title bar, we want to render the title bar over here. So do that at the top of your code in your app. And this is not your, it could be somewhere else, but I have two places. So I have a providers for all the context, and then app would go over here. And so you want to put it at the top or just before the main app of a main UI logic, right? As it goes at the top. And then we have the simple bar. So this is important. So we wrap our app shell that we made in previous videos around, we wrap it with a simple bar, and that would be shown in my, at the beginning I showed you how that looked like. And we want to pass a ref of scroll bar to it, and we want to set auto hide to true or false. So if you want to have auto hide, then you can remove this, but I think you should have auto hide off because it's kind of small. The bar is small, and I didn't feel like customizing it yet. All right. But anyways, let's figure out where else I use this. So because we're using a custom title bar, everything needs to be shifted down. And why does everything need to be shifted down? Well, basically, if we look at the code here in inspect elements, you can see something going on here. And you can see that, where is it? That app shell is taking up the entire window, and that the title bar just goes on top, or the header is taking up that extra space. So we need to adjust for the stuff and move everything else down. So I have it here as a class for title bar margin, and title bar margin is very small. It's just margin top of 2em. So if we're using a custom title bar, or we figured out we need to use a custom title bar, we just set the title margin of the nav bar, of the header as well. Oh, wait, okay. So we set the nav bar to that, as well as the aside if you're using an aside. I don't use an aside in my main app, but if you are using like settings for aside, then you'd probably need this. But header is the more important part, where we don't need to use a margin, but we need to override the styles completely, or a lot of them. So if you have a custom title bar, we want to set something else to the headers. And what we want to do is we want to increase the height of the header to be 1em bigger, so it goes in here. Okay, and then what we want to do is pretend that it's not there. And to do that, we need to move the content of the header down by 1em. So then we move that down by 1em by doing padding bottom 0. And then we need to shift everything down again. So we do margin top for that. So if I were to comment out that code, you can see that it's a bit off. So that's why I have it like this. All right. Now, I believe that is it for the code. And lastly, we want to have spacing at the bottom. So I'm not sure. Oh, spacing over here. So I'll show you what I mean. So you can see that this main content does not get shifted down. So that's why we need to shift that down as well. But the main problem is that this title bar is taking up content. So we need to create the header. We need to keep the header as the same size. And to keep the header at the same size, we have to increase the size. And you know, that's why I did all of that. And lastly, we want to have a scroll to top. So since we're using that scroller, I have edited my scroll to top button to use that scroller ref. And you know, you can just copy paste this code. I'm not going to explain it because it's out of scope of the video. And lastly, what else is there? There's one more thing that we need to do before I end the video, which is the styling of the window. So on Windows 11, we want to have rounded corners. Now I've confirmed in my code in real life that my corners are rounded by using this plugin. So what you want to do is install the Window Shadows plugin. To do that, we can go to your toml file and just copy paste this Window Shadows equals git that, branch that. Then we want to import set shadow, and in your code, in your setup, so we do .setup in your Tauri run. Just before .run, we do .setup. Then we take an app. Then we do app. Okay, this is from an older code, but we want to do if let sum window equals app.getWindowMain. Then we want to set the shadow to true and .expect unsupported platform. Okay, so this also avoids any errors, even though you can use unwrap by their examples. So yeah, that is it for the video. I know I think it's long, but I went through it pretty slowly this time so everyone will understand. And I also provided extra features like the scrolling so that your app will look just as nice and behave exactly the same without any user experience issues. And yeah, I will see you in the next one.